So, welcome everyone to today's episode of Andy's YouTube Food Skepticisms. I'm your host, Andy, and we're going to start off with a little video here today. So, is this true? Is it true that eating certain foods that are alkaline or health promoting and certain foods that are acidic are not? And that you'll promote your health if you consume alkaline foods? Well, that's what we're going to investigate here on today's episode 11. So, just a little overview of the topics we're going to cover. We're first going to talk about pH and what it means to actually refer to something as acidic or alkaline. We're going to look at the common pH of certain foods that you're used to, as well as hand soaps and things like that, bleach, household chemicals, that sort of thing. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the alkaline diet itself and give you an overview, and we'll talk about some of the evidence for whether it actually is health promoting or not. And finally, I'm going to talk about your body's natural pH buffering and why your systems are so good as they are. And I'll give you some takeaways before you leave. So the first thing you should know about pH is that it's a number that expresses alkalinity and acidity, right? No surprise there. What may be counterintuitive is that a higher pH does not mean it's more acidic. It actually means it's more alkaline. So, for example, a pH of 9 would be more alkaline than a pH of 2. And a lower pH, as I just mentioned, like a pH of 2, is more acidic. A pH of 2 just happens to be the pH of our stomach acid, so that's kind of a fun fact. Anyway, if you were to think of this as like a mathematician, pH is the logarithmic expression of the concentration of hydrogen ions in 1 liter of water. And there's the equation down there for you where C equals the concentration of hydrogen ions. It's a negative log 10C. Anyway, that's a little bit nerdy stuff. Just understand that pH is exponential. So, for example, if you have a pH of 7.1, it is thousands of times more alkaline than a pH of 7.0. So, that may be a little counterintuitive to some. Anyway, here are some pHs of common foods and household chemicals. There's tomato juice with 4. Stomach acid, like I said, is 2. It says gastric acid, same thing. And a lot of stomach acid, by the way, is hydrochloric acid, which you'll see has a pH of -1. But there are just other juices and enzymes involved, so you get a little bit of dilution. But vinegar, common household vinegar, 3. Coffee, you see, is right about in the middle. Your urine is a little bit on the acidic side, but it's just only slightly more acidic than pure water. And it's about as acidic as milk. Some of your more acidic, or excuse me, some of your more alkaline things include hand soap, ammonia, bleach, lye. You may know that if you're a former mobster. Anyway, so what's the skinny with the alkaline diet? Basically, it's also known as the pH diet or the acid ash diet, and ash refers to the alkaline nature of it. It's anyway, that's neither here nor there. There's some evidence that acidity promotes tumor growth, and this is where this whole thing came from. Um, and we also know that acidic or alkaline foods tend to affect urine pH to a degree. So the idea that they're promoting here with the alkaline diet is thought to have health benefits. So you can lower the impact of those acidic foods by avoiding them and emphasizing alkaline foods. And some examples of supposedly acidic foods are grains, alcohol, refined carbs. Some of the alkaline ones are spinach, tomatoes, and lemons. Uh, I can't help but notice grains, one of my favorite things in the world, and we won't even go into alcohol. It just happens to be acidic here. according to the alkaline diet. So clearly not for me right off the bat. Anyway, but the evidence here suggests that there there is basically no evidence. So if we're talking about something like cancer, there was a review done in 2016, a really good review by the British Medical Journal, which actually found no randomized controlled trials. Which, if you remember from a previous lecture on evaluating nutrition sources, randomized controlled trials are one of your highest quality evidence. That's because it's randomized. The people are randomized into what group they are, either the control or the experimental group, whether they receive the control, the placebo, or the treatments, the experimental group. So, and yeah, so that gives you kind of an idea of what that's all about. But um, and interestingly, there are no qualifying studies in that review that linked alkaline or pH diet to urinary tract cancer. And this is probably the most counterintuitive because we just mentioned that the pH of your urine can be affected by alkaline and acid foods, but that's about the only thing. So you would expect, oh, somebody would go after that and go, okay, is there any link there between the pH of your urine and cancers? And there just was none at the time of that press. Um, the review did not advise following an alkaline diet, in part because there were a number of issues. One, the Canadian Cancer Society has stood for that it doesn't alkaline diet does not affect body pH, just to urine. Um, and like we there is a warning, a concern that alkaline urine pH may actually aggravate bladder cancer treatment. So it's probably not something that we want to go with, even just to be on the safe side. But there have been studies on the link between alkaline diet and diabetes and hypertension and all these different things, and they've all found no significance or such small significance for large sample sizes that you would expect that, even if there were no relationship. Um, Now, some animal and in vitro studies, in vitro means like in a petri dish, right? If it's in the body, it's called in vivo, just so you know. But these animal and in vitro studies do support an alkaline diet for improved cancer treatment. But there's no reason to suspect really that that's also true for humans. Remember from a previous lecture that there are huge metabolic differences between many creatures in the animal world, like rats and humans, that have made that, although they may seem minor, have resulted in huge differences in terms of our metabolism of things like saccharin from artificial sweeteners and such. Um, so going on here, let's talk a little bit about your natural pH buffering system, right? We're pretty much at the point here where the alkaline diet is not doing us a whole lot of good. So what does our body do for us? Well, our lungs and kidneys actually buffer or monitor and keep that acid base balance really, really tightly controlled. And the way it does it is it's a very fast response. As soon as you go outside that optimal range, there's a rapid metabolic correction by it. And some of those things that happen immediately are your lungs start expelling more carbonic acid as carbon dioxide gas, and your kidneys retain more bicarbonate, which, fun factoid, bicarbonate's the same thing actually as baking soda that you probably use in your kitchen. Um, Anyway, so it's very tightly controlled, this pH range, and for good reason. If you went into metabolic acidosis, where basically your blood pH is on the acidic side, there are lots of reasons you'd end up for that, but a healthy person doesn't. But anyway, if you were to end up in that situation, understand it poses a risk to your organs. All the proteins in your body, think of like an egg. I don't know how many of you enjoy ceviche, but ceviche is a dish that involves using acid to cook fish or other foods. And so, like, just like you can use heat to cook and change proteins in foods like eggs, acid does the same thing. So if you were to do that in your body, you would have really, really catastrophic effects on your organ function. even by a slight change. Remember that even a pH change of about zero point 0.1 is thousands of times more acidic or more alkaline than that previous number. So um, anyway, and there's also something to be said, by the way, that the pH of your stomach acid is 2. So any actual pH from your food that you eat is likely to be negligible. And that's simply because it's all getting churned in stomach acid, guys. Anyway, here's some takeaways. One, more research is really needed on this. There is sufficient information to suggest that there might be something to the acid alkaline diet, but there's also an abundance of evidence that there's not. So I would say stay tuned before you make any switch to an alkaline diet because it is very expensive and there's simply no support for it. So save your money and trust that your body, your lungs, and your kidneys are doing their job. As always, please remember to hit like and subscribe if you like this and you want to subscribe and get notifications of new videos. Here are some references. And I'm doing something a little new here this time. I'm giving you a disclaimer of conflict of interest. And I think this is important because you see this in a lot of scientific studies. And this is also important because there's so many people on YouTube selling supplements and things like that. And they have financial vested interest in something like an alkaline diet by selling books or supplements or what have you, or being with an organization that promotes it or something like that. I have and have always had no financial or vested interest in foods, brands, diets, or other nutritionisms, as I call them. I simply produce these videos because I love the science and I want people to be informed. And I'm retired, so what the heck else am I going to do? All right, thank you everybody for tuning in. Please check out the next episode. And thank you again. Hit like and subscribe.